ओम जननीं शारदां देवीं रामकृष्णं जगद्गुरुं पादपद्मे तयो श्रित्वा प्रणमामि मुहुर्मुहुः. So we were discussing the conversation which took place on 8th May 1913 in Jairam Bati. So Radhu was indisposed and was laid up with pain and fever. But Radhu's eccentric mother began to scold Holy Mother for no reason at all. And she said, "You are about to kill my daughter with medicines." Because Holy Mother, of course, knew that she had to cure Radhu, and she was sick with pain and fever. So naturally, she was administering medicines which were prescribed. But this mad, eccentric mother would not understand that, and she thought she'll be killed. She scolded Holy Mother, saying, "You are about to kill my daughter with medicines." And she kept on scolding, and she lost all control over her tongue. So that is what. Then Uncle Baroda was called in. So he chased Radhu's mother out of the house. The Holy Mother too could bear it no longer. I mean, she was patiently bearing with all the abuse that Radhu's mother was, uh, all the abusive words she was using. But finally, when it went out of limit, Uncle Bodda was called and he asked Radhu's mother to leave, literally chased her out. And then she spoke some sharp words to Radhu's mother. Holy Mother never used to lose her temper. But without losing her temper, she perhaps felt that I have to tell something to this Radhu because she is exceeding the limit. So addressing us, the mother said, I mean all who were sitting there, including Ras Bihari Maharaj, was recording this conversation. Holy Mother, not directly to her, Radhu's mother, but she was telling the others, saying how nice Sri Krishna was to her. She says, I was married to one who never addressed me as Tui. Tui is normally used in Bengali to address somebody who is younger. It's not that one shows disrespect by saying Tui, but you have to uh, either say Apni or maybe something higher than that. When you address somebody who is respectable, you say Apni or Tumi and other things. But nobody addresses a person who is more senior or more respectable than one as Tui. Normally it is the mothers use it to address the child out of love. But Sri Krishna had so much respect for Holy Mother, though she was in age and also by virtue of Sri Krishna being her husband, he was perfectly justified in addressing her as Tui. That's what perhaps most of the husbands do. But Holy Mother says, I was married to one who never addressed me as Tui. He gave so much respect. We know a few days ago, Shodashi Puja was, the Tithi of Shodashi Puja was observed. Falaharani Kali Puja as it is known. On that day, Sri Krishna worshipped and set an example for the entire humanity. So even by inadvertently, Sri Krishna would never address Holy Mother as Tui. And she is referring to that. You see how Radhu's mother is treating me, and she's abusing me for no reason and using all sorts of words and blaming me unjustly that I am killing her daughter with medicines and all those things. But see, I was married to one who never addressed me even inadvertently as Tui. One day, she's narrating that incident. One day at Dakshineshwar, I carried master's food to his room. Sri Krishna's food, she carried. As I was leaving the room, the master was deep in samadhi, did not notice, no, deep in meditation. So he had not observed who had come. Normally, he thought sometimes Holy Mother used to send food. If there are some visitors, she used to send food with Lakshmi, who used to quietly go and keep the food, and at his convenience, Sri Ramakrishna used to eat. So the master thought he heard the footsteps, though he was meditating, and he thought it was his niece Lakshmi. He was perfectly justified in calling Lakshmi as Tui. He can easily use it. So he said, close the door behind you. You means he used Tui. So using that word, he instructed, thinking that Lakshmi has come and she was going back. So said, please close the door, don't leave it open. So that's why Sri Ramakrishna addresses, just a minute, addresses Lakshmi as if, I mean, he says to as if he is addressing Lakshmi and not Holy Mother. He didn't realize that Holy Mother had come and kept the food there. And Holy Mother immediately said, when she was asked to do that, said, yes, I'm closing the door before I leave. Then he immediately recognized, what have I done? I thought it was Lakshmi, but in fact it was the Holy Mother herself. So recognizing my voice, Sri Ramakrishna was embarrassed and said, ah, it's you. I thought it was Lakshmi. Please don't mind. Now, he immediately asked for pardon. He asked Holy Mother to pardon him for inadvertently thinking her to be Lakshmi, using Tui. The unintentional disrespect upset him so much that the next morning, you see, when we abuse or scold or speak nasty words to somebody else, we don't repent. But Sri Ramakrishna, even though he by mistake he had addressed her as, he thought, oh, did I do something wrong? So the next morning he came to the Nahabat and tried to explain why he addressed her as Tui. He could not sleep perhaps that day. So he says, look here, my dear, the whole of last night I could not sleep, worrying how indeed I spoke so rudely to you. All that he said was, you did not give her proper respect by saying Tui. That's what he felt. But it is a very pardonable, and he was justified also, since Holy Mother was so much younger to him by age. But still Sri Ramakrishna went and asked. He was so kind, so polite, so respectful of his own wife. And then he says, and look at this Radhu's mother. On one side, I lived with a person who never addressed me, and my husband who never addressed me as Tui. And on the other side, here is Radhu. Of course, Sri Ramakrishna was not there anymore. But Radhu's mother, and look how she abuses me day and night. I don't know what sin I committed to deserve all this. Perhaps, then she tells something very strange. She says, perhaps I worshipped Shiva with a thorny bilva leaf. That is why they say, when you offer anything to God, just be careful that you don't offer anything bad. Even that little bit of karma, that thorn. So she feels that accidentally I would have worshipped Shiva with a bilva leaf which had a few thorns in it. And that is why this thorn has now become this thorn. So that small mistake which I made has taken the form of Radhu's mother, and she is now giving me so much trouble. So that shows how carefully one has to live. Whatever offering we do, whatever worship we do, it has to be done with a great amount of care and perfection. That is how Sri Ramakrishna did all his actions, his small actions. Apparently, it was a small inadvertent mistake by addressing Mother as Tui, but he went and asked Holy Mother to forgive him for accidentally using, and not only that, he lost his sleep. So that shows that even through mistake, if he committed some errors, he would go and sort it out before being at peace. So that is what this incident shows. So on the next conversation is 12th May 1913, Jairam Bhatti, and Holy Mother now again is referring to Radhu's illness and says, the mother said, my mind now does not dwell upon Radhu even in the slightest degree. So I'm sick of her illness. I mean, there was so much prolonged pain, suffering, and a lot of trouble Holy Mother had to take on account of this sick child. And on the top of that, the mother used to now and then create trouble for her. So both mother and child were a big burden. But somehow she was in a different state of mind. So she prayed to the master. She says, I prayed to Thakur, ki please divert my mind a little to Radhu, otherwise who will look after her? Now people want to get away from trouble. But here was a personality, or here is Holy Mother, who says, my mind always tries to remain in that higher realm where we normal human beings struggle. We try to get rid of, we are so much attached to the people and the things around us that these troubles occupy and drain away a lot of our energy. And we have hardly time for meditation. Whereas here the opposite thing is there. She says, praying to the master, my mind doesn't like to come down to this lower plane. For us, it is not it would be a boon for people like us if our mind does not dwell on trivial and insignificant things. We would consider it to be a boon. But for us, for mother, she feels that she was so compassionate. She said this Radhu and her mother both depend so much on me that if I lose myself in meditation, then who will look after her? So she's asking something which no sadhaka will ask the Ishta. She says, please divert my mind a little to Radhu. So that it's like Sri Ramakrishna, whenever he meditated, he knew that his mind would soar to the high levels of samadhi. So he says deliberately has to keep one or two wishes, desires, that I want to drink water, I want to eat jalebi or something like that. So that would prevent his mind from staying very long, and something was necessary to bring his mind down from that height. So here also Holy Mother says similar phenomena we can observe, that she says, let my mind be a little bit diverted so that I can take with that diverted mind I can look after Radhu. Even that small portion of the mind, diverted mind, was enough for her to do all her duties in the world perfectly. That is why Brahmananji used to say that give 3/4 of the mind to God. With the remaining 1/4, you can do more work than somebody who has his mind uncontrolled, who has his mind disturbed. Because when we give 3/4 of the mind to God or 3/4 of our mind to meditation, that steady mind charges the remaining 1/4, which is enough to do all our routine and day-to-day jobs. Whereas when we think that if I concentrate my mind on the higher realities, or if I meditate more, perhaps my mind would not be able to do my day-to-day activities perfectly. So that is the idea. But normally we see, even in normal times, a person who is not meditating, he is actually 3/4 of his mind is wasted in certain kind of turmoil or restlessness, which anyway 3/4 of his mind is always busy with something else other than the work. Even when we are apparently doing the work sincerely, at the same time, so many unnecessary thoughts come and disturb us. And with that restless mind, whatever little output we do by 1/4 of the mind, that is also not perfect. So Brahman used to say, just put your heart and soul and meditate on Sri Ramakrishna or your Ishta. And with the 1/4 of the mind which is left, with that you can do wonderful work. That will be more than enough to excel in whatever work or whatever profession you decide to engage that mind in. So whenever the master now, Holy Mother is requesting Thakur, praying to Thakur, see, my mind is going perhaps 100% to in 100% getting concentrated in prayer, japa and all those things. But I know because of that Radhu might suffer. So please divert my mind a little bit so that a little bit, with that little bit, I can take care of Radhu. So then she says, I have never seen such illness. I mean, Radhu right from birth was full of illnesses, one after another. Then she says, perhaps in her former birth, she died of an illness for which she had not performed any penance. I have in mind to do these two things. One, to invoke the help of Chanda, a fierce spirit, through adequate rites, and other to undertake the Chandrayana vow. Now, these are the two things. Now, one may feel that is it not a superstition? Instead of solving, but whenever, because of bad karma, there are certain things which are beyond our control. Even the best of people, the most spiritual of people suffer from illnesses. So you can't say that illnesses will not come to a person who is spiritual. But Radhu's case, Holy Mother is saying, in some previous life, she had some illness. But if she had performed some penance or some japa or something, penance doesn't just mean doing some ritual mechanically, but even that, if it is done for the sake of removing the karma, might help. So she says, I have to do on her behalf, because in her former birth, Holy Mother has intuitively understood that she has died of an illness without trying to remedy it. So the same karma continues and she has to perhaps get that same illness till her karma is over. Either she has to work out her own karma, which was not possible in the case of Radhu, neither could her mother do that. So Holy Mother says, perhaps I have to do that. Somebody has to do, even to remove the karma of others. The person who tries to help others, he has to either take the sins upon himself or do some penance and dedicate the fruits of that, dedicate the karma. I said, I'm doing this karma for somebody else. And we pray to God that I will do japa on his behalf or her behalf, and please be happy with the penance. So that is one way of removing the karma, not only one's own karma, but others' karma. So doing japa for others, praying for others, this is all good karma. It will not only help the person who is doing, but it will also help the person who to whom it is directed, so that we feel out of compassion that since he cannot do, like Radhu could not do japa, neither could her mother take care of that illness. So there was no other option remaining to Holy Mother other than to do these rituals and work out the karma with the hope that some of that illness goes away. So then she says, whenever the master Sri Ramakrishna experienced Mahabhava, the Mahabhava is a state which only incarnations and great prophets like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu have. It is there written in the scriptures that everybody and anybody will not have this kind of Mahabhava. But there are certain conditions under which this Mahabhava is the highest type of devotion, which is Mahabhava was experienced by Radha in her love towards Krishna. So also the gopis towards Krishna, not only Radha but the other gopis. So they say after that it was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu among all the bhakti saints who perhaps would have experienced that Mahabhava. It is so rare. So Sri Ramakrishna experienced that, but there were certain reactions, because the body has to bear the result of sadhana, whatever we do. It's not that the body will not take the sadhana will not take its toll on the physical body. It will, but by the grace of the Divine Mother, Sri Ramakrishna, somebody or the others will suggest some remedy. So same thing happened. So he said he used to experience excruciating burning sensation in his chest. So when that Mahabhava comes, it is like passing a high voltage of electricity through a wire which does not have the capacity to pass that kind of current. So in that case, there is a tendency that it gets heated up or gets burnt. So sometimes these spiritual experiences shatter the body. That is what actually happened with Sri Ramakrishna. There were too many experiences, high spiritual experiences, and as a result, they were uh, creating devastating. I mean, creating a great effect on his body. So he was feeling that excruciating pain, burning sensation. So mother says you might have read about it in the books, because the Leela Prasang and other books and some other biographies of Sri Ramakrishna were already published. Holy Mother lived for almost 34 years after the passing of Sri Ramakrishna. So then she says, my brother-in-law, that is Sri Ramakrishna's brother, then brought him to the village home in Kamarpukur. He called in a few exorcists, and with their help, Chanda was invoked. He addressed the master by his childhood name and said, "Oh, so and so Gadai, your state of Mahabhava is due to the grace of God. It is not a disease. Don't eat too much betel nut. It increases lust." So now instead of curing him, he said, "Don't worry, this is not because of that, but be careful about food, especially betel nut." Says if you don't do that, then your body perhaps will not feel that excruciating pain. If a man dies for a particular illness without doing the necessary penance, necessary remedy, it it can be performing these rituals, or it can be simply repetition of the japa. Repetition of the japa, if one has the one has got the grace of Guru and has a Siddha mantra, then no penance is higher than that. But if somebody does not have is not have the grace of a guru and the mantra, then he has to do other penances which are prescribed, like going worshipping different deities, demigods. So he says, mother says, this is a wonderful thing she's telling about karma, that if by for some reason you have certain illness and you die in the process without curing it with the help of japa or any penance, then you get the same illness in the next birth. So certain characteristics which are the result of our karma of the previous birth are carried over to the next birth. But she says here, but this rules do not apply to a holy man. You see, there are exceptions to this. This is for an ordinary man. But for a holy man who is doing sadhana, these rules don't apply. He may die of a certain illness, but he may not be born again with that same illness. For example, Sri Ramakrishna, he died of cancer. So he was not cured. He died of cancer. In fact, he lost weight, and then you see towards the end of his life. That doesn't mean that in the next incarnation again he will have cancer. That's why she says this rule does not apply to holy men. But ordinary samsaris, for them, this rule applies. Then Kedar's mother was sitting there. Says the monk dies repeating the name of God and therefore he attains God. So she says perhaps this is the reason that he is not born with the whatever diseases he has towards the end of his life or before his death. Those will not be repeated in the next birth, because the name of God which he repeats, which has become a habit with him. If a monk or a holy man is really sincere, then he attains to God. By virtue of the repetition of the name, he attains to God. So there's no question of him being born again to suffer the sickness because of karma. Then mother says, yes, that's true. The other day, she's giving an example. A young man died at Kolpada. Will he be reborn? Perhaps the Holy Mother knew that he was a holy person and had done a lot of japa and other things. So he says, no, that was his last rebirth, last birth. I mean, she knew, she could intuitively know that this person has spent his whole life in spiritual practices, in repeating doing penances and japa, etc. So there's no question of birth for him. Then she says, at the time of his illness at Kashipur, the master once remarked I am ill. The officers of the Kali temple may criticize me for not performing any penance. Then to Ramlal he said, take this 10 rupees and go to Dakshineshwar. Offer the money to Mother Kali and distribute it among the Brahmanas and others. Now, one way of doing any penance is to distribute money. So, Holy Mother is to say, jar ache she japo, let him, jar ache she mapo. Mane, those who have money, let them shell out that money for the welfare of others and distribute it among the Brahmanas. Or jar nai, she japo. Mane, those who don't have money, it doesn't matter. It can compensate by doing japa. So there are two ways of doing penances. One is by giving gifts to others, giving certain things which you have earned by hard work, giving it to others, not ill-gotten money. I mean the money which one has worked hard for. So that is also a kind of penance. The hard work you have put to earn certain money, if you gift it for a good purpose, it is as good as a penance. Or if you don't have money, at least do japa for the welfare of humanity, for others. That is also as good as a penance. So a sadhu is not entitled to perform any ritual. Therefore, the master asked Ramlal to offer the money to his chosen deity and later on distribute it among the Brahmanas and others. So he had taken sannyasa from Totapuri. So he was observing all the rules of a monk. And since monks are not supposed to perform the karma kanda, the rituals, they can do japa. They are not prohibited from doing that, but they are not supposed to do any Vedic ritual as a penance. So that's why the master said, he asked Ramlal to offer the money to his chosen deity. Once you offer it to God, then you can distribute it. Then it doesn't become yours. It becomes Thakur's. It becomes the Lord to whom you are offering. It becomes his. So he is the possessor. So that purifies that. So though a monk cannot perform a ritual, he can perform it by giving it to some god or offering it to the Lord and then distributing that other things as prasad. So that's why when some holy men want to give certain things, some people, householders, they refuse. Then the holy man has to tell them, don't worry, I have offered it to God, now you can take. Then they feel comfortable and then they accept these things. So because he cannot perform this dana and other things, sadhu is not entitled. So what should he do? He can offer that money or whatever he wants to Sri Ramakrishna, and that you can offer as prasad to all the devotees or the brahmanas. In ancient times, hermits and rishis used to live in the forest. Could they perform penances like Chandrayana? They used to offer only fruits and roots to their chosen ideal and later on distribute them among the needy. That was enough for them. So Chandrayana, I think it's a very elaborate ritual. I do not know what it is. So though for those penances, one needed to stay in the town or one needed to be a householder to afford that. Whereas rishis and hermits who are living in the forest, as it is, they did not have much. So whatever fruit or roots they collected and lived by eating those things, that itself they offered to their Ishta, and later on they used to do penances by distributing it to the needy people. So Radhu's mother says, then, my aunt died of a certain illness. Do you mean to say that she has been born again with that illness? Mother says, do you think your aunt has not been reborn? Certainly she has again taken birth and inherited that illness as well. Many a time, a man born in a particular family takes birth and dies again and again in the same family as a result of his karma. So that possibility is there. In some families, you find some children dying very early. And if the child is born after a few years, then the parents normally think it is the same child who could not work out his karma has been born again. And then they go to offer their penances and other manta and other things to the deity in the temple and say that please save this child. So we used to often see there's so much death during childbirth in ancient days. So even if there was some death due to illness. People used to believe that when the child dies, a young one dies, then he might be reborn as the next child, or he may be in the same family. So, but mother confirms that and says many a time a man born in a particular family takes birth and dies again and again in the same family as a result of his karma. So he may be born several times. If he dies as a young person, he may not live long enough to work out his karma. So what the other option is, be born again, and then again and again you get born till you get rid of karma. So that is the last conversation on this day. And then on 8th June, after a few months, Holy Mother's old house. There are two houses. One was the old house in Jairambati, and there is a new house which was built later on. So she was in the old house. Surendranath Bhaumik and Durga Pada Ghosh have been staying in the house of Holy Mother. They were to leave that afternoon. In the morning after their bath, they came to the mother and saluted her. She blessed them both by placing her hands on their heads and asked them to take their seats. After exchanging a word or two, Surendra said to the Holy Mother, Mother, while worshipping the Master, I find one difficulty. I suppose a devotee has a general belief that, now this is the question Surendra is asking Holy Mother. She said, whenever I try to meditate on Sri Ramakrishna or on his Ishta Devata, whoever it was, he found one difficulty. And that difficulty, suppose a devotee has a general belief that his Ishta Devata and the Master are one and the same. He worships the goddess through the image of the Master. Then maybe his Ishta was a divine mother, a goddess, and perhaps he was told to meditate on that goddess as Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna is that goddess. Thakur used to say, Ma Sharda used to say when Sri Ramakrishna passed away, he said, my Kali has gone. So she used to see the manifestation of the Divine Mother Kali in her own husband, Sri Ramakrishna. And vice versa. Even Sri Ramakrishna used to say that the mother who is he used to in fact see Mother Kali everywhere as the all-pervading Divine Mother. So he says, suppose a devotee has a general belief, that is, he has been told at the time of initiation that your Ishta Devata and the Master are one and the same, even if that Ishta Devata is Krishna or deity. That is why he worships goddess through the image of his Master. Afterwards, he surrenders the fruits of the japa to the image of the Master, uttering the words, Tvat Prasadat Maheshwari, O great goddess. He is offering it to Sri Ramakrishna, but the prayer says, in the prayer he is addressing Sri Ramakrishna as if she is the Divine Mother. O great goddess, through thy grace, and so forth. Now this creates a confusion in my mind. This is what Surendranath says. I am offering a prayer which is for the Divine Mother, and I am worshipping that Divine Mother as Sri Ramakrishna. But whether it will reach him, I am getting a bit confused. How can I do that? I can't. He says, according to the prayer that I say, it is meant for the Divine Mother, and then I try to worship that because I try to see that Divine Mother through that Sri Ramakrishna. So the mother said with a smile, don't worry, my child. Our Master alone is Maheshwara and Maheshwari. He is the Supreme God and the Supreme Goddess. He is Sarva Deva Devi Swarupa. He is the embodiment of all deities. He alone is the embodiment of all mystic syllables. So whatever mantra you use, you utter. That's why in the Ramakrishna tradition, different gurus give different mantra with which you can worship Sri Ramakrishna. The bija sometimes changes, though the name remains same, the bija might change. That is why Holy Mother says, he is the embodiment of all the mystic syllables, whether it is Reem or any other bija. There are so many bijas, Aim, Kleem. So she says he is the embodiment of all mystic syllables. So if you find a mantra with a particular bija, it can be used to worship Sri Ramakrishna because he is Sarva Deva Devi Swarupaya. You can worship him with the bija meant for the Divine Mother. You can worship him for the bija meant for Krishna, or you can worship him with the bija meant for Rama. So there are different deities. Everybody has a unique bija. But for Sri Ramakrishna, there is no problem. He is the embodiment of all the deities and he is the embodiment of all the bija mantras, the mystic syllables. Then Holy Mother says, one can worship him through all gods and goddesses. First, you can worship him with any mantra, or you can worship him through all the gods and goddesses. Suppose you like to worship the Divine Mother, but you can worship Sri Ramakrishna through her, through the Divine Mother. You can address him as Maheshwara or Maheshwari. Maheshwara is Shiva, Maheshwari is Shakti. Surendra then says, Mother, but what can I do? I cannot concentrate my mind in meditation at all. Forget Shakti or Shiva. I can't even concentrate my mind. It's very restless. Mother says, don't worry, it does not matter much. It will be enough if you look at the picture of the master. The master was ill at Kashipur. So mother is giving him great comfort. He said, at least can you look at the picture of the master? He has left behind a wonderful image or a picture, photograph of his, the meditation pose. He said, at least can you look at it? And if you look at it, that would be enough. That will serve the purpose if you cannot concentrate. The master, he says, was ill at Kashipur. The young disciples used to attend on him by turns. So Gopal was also there. One day, instead of serving the master, he went for meditation. Naturally, they were serving at the same time. Whenever they were free, they used to go and meditate. And Sri Ramakrishna used to encourage that also. He meditated for a long time. When Girish Babu heard of it, he remarked, Girish Babu was full of faith. He said, if Sri Ramakrishna is there, if you think of him, then it's better than meditation. So the Girish Babu remarked, the one upon whom, he says, please call him. What is he doing? He is neglecting his duties in the name of meditation. He says, the one upon whom he is meditating with closed eyes is suffering on a sick bed, and fancy he is meditating upon him. What is he trying to do? Your Ishta is lying on a bed, or the person whom maybe your Ishta is somebody else, but since Sri Ramakrishna is Sarva Deva Devi Swarupa, he has to be, if you serve him, it is as good as worshipping the Ishta and doing penance. So he says, Gopal was then sent for. And Girish Ghosh, who had so much faith, said, what are you doing? You go to a corner and meditate on the Ishta. But that Ishta is Sri Ramakrishna. He is living in a live form. He is there. Why don't you serve him? Then Gopal was sent for. The master asked him to stroke his legs. Perhaps his legs were paining. He said to him, do you think I am asking you to stroke my legs because they are aching? Oh no. In your previous births, you did many virtuous acts. Therefore, I am accepting your service. So, Sri Ramakrishna was so compassionate that said, I didn't need all the seva which you, Gopal, was doing. He said, I am allowing you to massage my legs or do some kind of service to give you because you have done so many virtuous acts in your previous life. I am giving this opportunity and accepting your service so that you can get its benefit. Look at the picture of the master and that will be enough. Even if you can't do this, at least if you can look at the picture, that would be enough. Then Surendra says, Mother, I do not succeed in regularly counting the beads 3 times a day. Perhaps he was told by my Holy Mother to count beads 3 times a day. Then mother says, don't worry, even if you don't, try to remember the master always and perform your japa whenever you can. The least you can do is at least salute him mentally. Can't you do that? So she is saying, doesn't matter if you can't do japa as sincerely or regularly as you have been told. It is good if you do, but if you can't do it, then also it is fine. But then, can you not at least do pranams to him, salute him mentally? Not necessary to even physically do it. You can definitely do that whenever. It's not necessary to remember him always. If it is possible, it's okay. That's why she says, try to remember the master always. If that is achieved, then you don't have to sit and do japa and all those things. Then Durga Pada was sitting there along with Surendra. He is asking, Mother, I do not quite understand what rules one should observe regarding one's food. Now, the previous conversation we also discussed about Shraddha. Here again, this topic has been introduced. The mother says, the master was very particular about one thing with regard to food. He used to forbid all the devotees from eating the food of the Shraddha ceremony. Other than that, she says he was not particular about anything. He used to say that it affected one's devotion. Apart from this, you may eat what you like, but remember the master when you do so. So every time before you eat, make it a practice to offer him and then eat it as prasad. Then its impact will not be felt on you. Other than that, only the Shraddha food you have to avoid. Otherwise, what you eat is not so important. Of course, if it doesn't suit you, you should not eat. The general thumb rule is that whatever makes you sleepy or whatever does not agree with you, that is common sense. Holy Mother is not saying that. But don't be fastidious or particular about that. If it agrees with you, why don't you eat it? But Shraddha food you should not eat, especially for devotees. Holy Mother is saying. Then Durga Pada says, Mother, while performing my duties in the hospital, many a time I feel thirsty. I feel compelled to drink water without consideration for place and persons. In India, that was the rule that you normally did not take, either you carry your own water. That's why sadhus always carried the kamandalu. They say the water that you drink, or food, of course, food also is included, but tiffin bags and all those things perhaps were not there. But it is better to cook one's own food or carry one's own water. That's what in Indian tradition they do. So he says, while performing duties in the hospital, if I feel thirsty, then if I have to drink some water, and I have to do it without consideration for place and persons. As a matter of fact, I do so. I drink it whenever I feel thirsty. I have to drink. What do you say to that, Mother? Then Mother says, she is quite considerate. She says, what else can you do? You do it in connection with the discharge of your duty. But please remember the master while you drink the water. As you do this while on duty, it will not injure you. Is it ever possible for those who are called upon to perform various odd jobs and duties like the hospital work to observe all the religious injunctions regarding food? So Holy Mother seems to be very liberal. All she insists is, if you can't follow anything and cannot ascertain the purity of the source of water and the food which you take, then the next best thing is first offer it to Thakur or to your Ishta, and then partake it of it as prasad. Then that will not harm you. Then Surendra says, you see, Mother, we are all householders. We live in families with so many relatives. Sometimes it happens that while food is being cooked, some members of the family partake it. I mean, somebody has brought you some food, but somebody has already eaten. The rest of it, they offer it to you. Later on, that food is brought to me. I hesitate to offer that food to God, because if somebody has eaten and the leftover, if I can't offer it to God, it is uchista. It has already been polluted. The mother says that is inevitable in the case of householders. So she says, yes, what else can you do? One has to be practical. Then she says, we also have to face similar situations. Take, for instance, there may be a sick person in the family. Part of the food may be kept aside for him. But when food is placed on the plate, please remember the master and think that he himself has given this food and eat it. Then it will not have any injurious effect on the growth of devotion. So here Holy Mother is saying, though we should not eat indiscriminately food offered by anybody and everybody in all places, but at the same time she says, if you are forced to do that by virtue of your job or because of your circumstances in which you have been placed, then she says, just offer it. And you have to think one more thing, that it is the master who has given this food. And then you eat it. See, it will not affect you. Then it will not have any injurious effect on the growth of devotion. Then Surendra says, Mother, how can I describe to you my mental condition? You are the inner guide. You understand everything. I have been undergoing all possible sufferings for the last few years. But for your blessings, I would have perhaps been dead by this time. So Surendra is undergoing a lot of problems with his workplace and home and other things. So he says, how can I describe? Since you are the inner guide and you are guiding me always. I have been able to undergo all these sufferings for the last few years. But for your blessings, I would have been dead by this time. So I would have either died by pressure or tension or anxiety, but due to certain diseases which are very closely associated with anxiety and all those things, or perhaps I would have been forced to commit suicide. So either way, I would have been dead by this time if your grace was not there. Then Mother says something wonderful, promising, and that something which gives us all hope. She says, yes, my child, you do not have to tell me of the sufferings in the life of the world. She knows it. She says, you don't have to tell me. There is no limit to it. In your case, it is inevitable. I mean, he was working in his duties were such that these sufferings were inevitable. Then he says, look at me, my child, what sort of life I am leading by the will of the master. See how much I am suffering on account of this girl, Radhu. Radhu and her mother, obviously. So she says, now I have led such a good life. I have done my duties. But still, you see, there is no end to the sufferings in the life of this world. So one has to transcend it because there is no limit to it. Then she says, Surendra says, yes, mother, your condition gives us consolation and hope. You yourself know the sufferings of the world, and therefore we can expect your compassion. So Surendra is trying to explain to Holy Mother, we know that you have willingly undergone all these things so that you can sympathize with us and help us in certain periods of life where we have to suffer. Then Mother says, don't be afraid, my child. The master is ever present. He alone will protect you both here and hereafter. Then Surendra asks some question, very strange question. He says, Mother, we are living so far away. Are dreams real? So he thinks that I have to leave mother and go to my workplace now. So, but Holy Mother says, Master is ever present. He will alone protect you both here and hereafter. So the practice of the presence of our Ishta makes the Ishta come with us, protect us wherever we are. That is the assurance given by Holy Mother. Then Surendra says, Mother, we are living so far away. But sometimes perhaps he gets dreams. Are dreams real? Then Mother says, he is probably referring to dreams of holy people, not nightmares or anything. But Holy Mother here says, yes, they are. Dreams regarding the master are real. Not all dreams. But he forbade his disciples to narrate, even to him, dreams regarding himself. So Sri Ramakrishna is to believe that whoever gets a noble dream or a dream of one's Ishta or God or Guru, it is a good sign, but he never wanted them to make it public. One of the reasons being is that people will ridicule and say, oh, it is a dream, don't bother. But Holy Mother doesn't say that. She says dreams regarding the master are real. If by some chance you have those dreams, then it is absolutely real. It is not just to be dismissed as a dream. Then Surendra says, oh, Mother, we do not know what the master was like. He has, of course, come to Mother much later. We have not seen him. So for us, you are the master and everything else. Then Holy Mother gives the assurance, don't fear, my child. The master will look after you. He will watch over you here and hereafter. When you are alive, he will protect you. When even after giving up the body, the master will continue to guide you, protect you. That's why she says, don't fear, my child. The master will look after you. He'll watch over you here and hereafter. He will protect you always, always, whether you are living, whether you are struggling, whether you are at peace with yourself, or whether you have been born again. So, whatever be the state, you don't have to bother. He will look after you. So, because he had not seen the master, he said just to imagine the visualize the master was enough. But she says, no, don't worry. You don't have to know how the master looked like in flesh and blood. Of course, the photo tells you how he looks like. But she says, don't worry. He will look after you, whether you worship him and imagine him to be true or not. Then he says, he will watch over you here and hereafter. And remember, he will protect you always. So the only thing we have to do is to feel the presence, carry the master wherever we go, carry our Ishta, and whether it is the workplace, whether it's a good circumstance, bad circumstance. Recently we were having a discussion. Okay, why do we see sorrow in the life of devotees, sadhakas? In fact, if you see very clearly, Sri Ramakrishna is present more when there is suffering. In a place where there is more suffering, you perhaps think, oh, this is a cursed place. Here everybody seems to be suffering. But Sri Ramakrishna is more compassionate and gracious towards that place. The reason being is, it is just like the mother. When the mother thinks that the child is busy with his toys and is happy with the toys, he said, go. He gives us a big rope. Sri Ramakrishna or any Ishta will give us a big rope, not knowing that we are wasting our valuable time playing with the toys. So now and then a little bit of grief, Holy Mother says that, she is implying that, that whether you don't have to fear, even if he puts you in difficult circumstances, you have to be grateful that his presence will not only help you to solve the problems, but he will watch over you here and hereafter. He will protect you always. Now, if one does not seek protection, the reason why we find that Thakur is more gracious when a person is in difficult circumstances is this, because that is when we really try to feel his presence. That is why there is a beautiful song, Sukh mein sumirana sab kare, dukh mein sumirana sab kare, sukh mein smare na koi, or dukh mein na sumirana kare na koi. So when you are happy, when you are sorrowful, you naturally remember God. But when you are happy, then you are busy with your other toys. So you forget God. And that causes problems, not the dukkha. So it is unreasonable to expect that Sri Ramakrishna will be there. But he says, the second part of the Doha is that Sukhume Sumirana, if you remember God when you are happy, and don't be diverted by the toys, even when you are enjoying, think that it is because of his grace. So there are some people who, though they may be apparently enjoying, they'll feel that it is by Sri Ramakrishna's grace. We had a very nice monk, Dharmatmanandji, who he is still there. He used to, we as young brahmacharis or young students. In fact, I knew him as a student. We used to go to some retreats in some of our centers where he was to look after the garden. And for some time, as part of a routine, we had to work in the garden. So we found this joyful monk. Every time he does something and explains to us, he used to literally repeat Jai Ram Krishna, Jai Ram Krishna, Jai Ram Krishna. So we used to feel, you can hear people calling the Lord when you are in trouble, but here he was happy. So a nice flower and somebody has done a nice job, he will remind him, oh, it is Jai Ram Krishna. It's Sri Ram Krishna's kripa that you have done it perfectly. So that habit, if you have made that habit, then when you are in trouble, when you are in difficulty, the presence of Sri Ram Krishna will help you, or the presence of your master or the Ishta will help you. So that is the idea, that the presence of, that's why Kunti, the famous prayer, Kunti tells Krishna, somebody asks her, why don't you pray to Krishna to remove your troubles, all your troubles? You are so close, all the sons are so close, uh, Yudhishthira, Arjuna, and everybody is so close to Krishna. He is neither helping you nor he is helping your children, and they are going through so much of trouble. Then very nicely Kunti says, I never ask him for all solving my problems. I just pray to him that let me remember him, because his presence, his support, his guidance, his protection is enough for me to manage these troubles. I can manage these troubles myself, though they may look unsurmountable, but for me, his grace is more paramount. If he is the protector and if he protects me, then I don't want a temporary happiness which will make him lose him. I'd rather be happy with whatever he dishes out to me, provided he is there to protect me. So the grace of the Lord is more important, Mother says. So don't worry because of your duties. You may be, if you just remember, you don't have to be afraid that whatever happens because of the difficult nature of your duties, the Master will look after you, he will watch over you here and hereafter, and he will protect you always. So we shall now conclude. If there are some questions, there are 4 questions. Let me just see. Not all are questions. The last one is a question. So, why did Swami Vivekananda suffer so much when Sri Ramakrishna Dev was still? Now, I think this is the question I answered just now. I am seeing the question now. So, the same question Kunti asks, or somebody asks Kunti, the mother of the Pandavas. You are always supported. Krishna is your friend, the friend of your family. He has been your guardian. He has been your friend to Arjuna. He's been advisor to you. The Lord himself, the Lord of the universe is your friend, and still why are you suffering? So same reasoning we can give here. Swami Vivekananda had to suffer, but we don't realize that whether he suffered or whether he was happy, Sri Ramakrishna's presence was always there. For example, when he came to some of the jealous people in the West, they tried to poison him because he was becoming increasingly popular after his Chicago addresses, and then he was invited everywhere. So there was a kind of jealousy, and then some people conspired to kill him by putting poison in his coffee. So many a times Sri Ramakrishna says, Swamiji says that Sri Ramakrishna came and literally warned him to throw the coffee. So also many other cases we see in the life of Swami Abhedananda, that he was about to board a ship which would have helped him to cross the Atlantic and go to America. So he was about to board the ship and he went to the ticket office and he was about to buy the ticket. Then he heard or he saw some voice. He heard some voice behind and somebody tugging his cloth, the chadar, the the shawl that he was wearing. Somebody was pulling it again and again, and as if he heard a sound that don't go, don't buy this ticket. So after 2 attempts, then he really gave up. It was so powerful that he did not undergo that trip. And next day he came to know from the papers that the newspapers that that ship which he was supposed to go, had he boarded that ship, it capsized, and all the people who were traveling in that, they lost their lives. So in some strange way, in spite of all the difficulties which Swamiji faced, in fact, his whole life was full of difficulties. His father died when he was about to take up a life of a monk. He wanted to become a monk. Then all the responsibilities came. With great difficulty, Sri Ramakrishna persuaded him, said, as long as I am alive, you stay at home. So he solved all his problems, the legal problems. And though his father had died when he was very young, there was so much of poverty. After that, he went to America. There were difficulties there. He lost the address many times. But then, if you see the thread of faith, the presence of Thakur that he felt was so strong that whether he was happy or whether he was, when he was happy, when he was successful, when everybody appreciated him, he used to very humbly say, if I have said any good word, it is Sri Ramakrishna's. But if I have done some mistakes, it is mine alone. So he never took credit. Even when people praised him and he was happy. So that's the reason when Sri Ramakrishna always protected him, guided him, and gave him some kind of, gave him strength and support when he most needed it. That's the reason why Swami Vivekananda suffered. Okay, so I'll take your leave now. There are no more questions. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Swamiji. Namaste.
Namaste.